Mr. Logan.
Detective.
I bet you got a nice fat promotion when I got pinched, didn't you?
That's not the way it works.
You put the blame on me because you couldn't solve your case and you thought you were gonna get fired.
No.
Objection. Badgering.
Sustained. Move on, Mr. Jackson.
You're trying to ruin my life to protect a bunch of whores.
Objection, Your Honor. Badgering.
Mr. Jackson, I'm way past regretting the decision to allow you to defend yourself.
If I may, Your Honor, I would like to continue the cross-examination.
Keep it on point, Mr. Gondapur.
I am most curious, Detective Logan. How did you form your opinion on how my landscaper and I collaborated in the murders of these women?
I've been a detective for over 25 years, mostly in homicide.
Are you a psychologist?
No.
Criminal profiler? Any professional training on the psychology of serial killers?
No.
Well, your opinion can hardly be valid, can it?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Sustained. Enough, Mr. Gondapur.
What physical evidence did you find to suggest that either myself or my co-defendant are guilty of such ghastly crimes as the one suspected of the so-called Massapequa Mangler?
Burlap fibers found in Wendy Crane's hair matched that found in Patty Jackson's van and in your garden shed. Probably most telling was a cutting tool we found in the same shed with Wendy Crane's blood on it. There was also duct tape and zip ties found in the van and the shed that were an exact match for ones found on other victims.
Anything in my home?
Not that I'm aware.
So you found evidence in Mr. Jackson's van, evidence in my garden shed which Mr. Jackson had access to.
That's right.
None of my DNA nor hair samples, nor fingerprints found on any of the victims.
No. You were very careful in that regard.
Just one more question, Detective Logan. As a hedge fund manager, I made $25 million last year alone in salary and bonuses.
That's nice.
Do I sound like the type of person who does his own gardening?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Sustained.
I object too.
What is this, some kind of Marx Brothers routine? Get your ducks in a row, gentlemen, or I'll start holding you in contempt.
Sit down, you imbecile! No further questions, Your Honor.
Gentlemen, to what do we owe the pleasure?
We've come to make you an offer, Mr. Cutter. One I think you'll find quite generous given the circumstances. What if Mr. Jackson were prepared to admit to being the Massapequa Mangler?
Just Mr. Jackson?
Manslaughter 2 for my co-defendant. 10 years, eligible for parole in 5.
And you walk away with what? A ticket for littering?
Aiding and abetting. 5 years in a minimum security prison where I am allowed to continue to manage investment funds for clients.
Is this a joke?
No deal, Mr. Gondapur. Take my advice and spend some of that money of yours on a lawyer. See you in court.
Mr. Jackson, when did you begin working on my estate in Brookville?
About 9 months ago.
Around the time the first of the Mangler's victims was found.
What? Yeah, I guess.
Earlier, Detective Logan speculated that we formed a dominant-submissive pairing, with you as the submissive. Could he be correct?
Objection. Your Honor, the witness has no expert knowledge of the subject.
Sustained. Direct your questions elsewhere, Mr. Gondapur.
No way. I make my own decisions.
Mr. Jackson, the objection was sustained. If you don't know what that means, then I suggest we take a recess so your lawyer can explain it to you.
But I'm my lawyer.
Yep.
The police found physical evidence relating to the murders inside your work van, did they not?
Yeah, but that van belongs to the landscaping company.
Did anyone else have access to it?
Sometimes. Sometimes I'd leave it at the nursery. The other guys could have used it.
So many people with so much access to so much evidence. It would be very hard to say definitively who did what, wouldn't it?
Objection, Your Honor. Your Honor, defense is leading the witness.
Find a new line of questioning, Mr. Gandapur.
The police found some burlap sacks in my garden shed. Fibers from the burlap matched ones found in Wendy Crane's hair. Do you have any idea how those fibers got on the victim?
No idea.
What were they for, those sacks of yours?
I bought some pesticide called atrazine. I have a license to buy it.
And you really have no idea how fibers from those sacks got on poor Miss Crane?
Objection, Your Honor. The question has been asked and answered.
Sustained.
Well, what are you asking me that for?
What about the cutting tool, Patrick? The one found in the shed. It had Wendy Crane's blood on it.
I don't know. Maybe someone was doing stuff in the shed, like at night. I didn't see it, or I would have called the police.
You have to admit it is damning evidence against the two of us, really. I mean, it was my shed.
I guess so.
You guess so. How did a bloody knife get into my shed without you noticing a thing?
I don't know.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Sustained. Move on, Mr. Gandapur.
The cutting tool we found in the garden shed, the one with Wendy Crane's blood on it? I suppose you don't know how that got there either.
Nope.
What about the fibers found in Wendy Crane's hair? The ones from the burlap sacks of atrazine in the shed, ones you put there.
I didn't bring anyone back there, okay? It could have been him, you know.
Blood taken from your van was found to contain Wendy Crane's DNA. How did it get there?
I don't know.
Was Wendy Crane ever in your van?
No.
Well, I'm confused, Mr. Jackson. Because according to the statement you made to detectives, you claim to have let Wendy Crane in your van to solicit her services as a prostitute.
That's not true. They made me say that.
Did they put her blood in your van too?
I don't know how it got there, but it wasn't me.
Let's see if I can paint an accurate picture of what happened to these women.
You do what you want. I'm through talking.
You pick a girl, you put them at ease, you give them some crystal meth to disorient them.
I don't give those chicks nothing. They bring it if they want it.
Exhibit A, one jewelry box of your own design, found in the van you drove, with crystal meth inside a hidden compartment. You're quite the carpenter, Mr. Jackson.
Fine, yeah, it's mine. That doesn't prove I'm a killer.
Your co-counsel has been strangely quiet, Patty. Even you have to know he could have objected a dozen times to what I've had to say so far.
Why aren't you trying to stop her? She's badgering me, right?
Mr. Jackson, what will happen to you if you take the fall for the murders of these 8 women?
I guess Mr. Gandapur would go free.
Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Jackson doesn't know that. It's conjecture.
Sustained.
So you found your voice after all, counsel. No more questions, Your Honor.
So what do you want, Mr. Jackson?
I want a deal.
Oh? What's your lawyer think?
Gandapur thinks I'm an idiot, but I know when I'm being set up.
You're a little late to that party, but I guess you got there. What are you offering?
Say I know what happened to those girls. Say I was there. Say maybe I had something to do with it, but I didn't kill them.
That might be worth something.
Accessory after the fact? That's 7 years no parole, but it's got to be concurrent with the time I got breaking parole.
Concurrent?
Yeah, sometimes you can learn useful stuff in prison.
You're looking at 5 years just for breaking parole, Patty. You think my boss is going to accept 7 for being an accessory to 8 murders? 15 years, in addition to the 5 you have coming. No parole.
You can't get Gandapur without me. 10 years. I do the 5 I got coming concurrently.
Okay, let's hear it.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I realize this is unusual, but it's important that you know Mr. Jackson has agreed to plead guilty to the charges against him. This means Mr. Jackson and Mr. Gandapur are no longer co-defendants. Mr. Jackson now testifies for the people. The prosecution may proceed.
Mr. Jackson, how did you and Mr. Gandapur first get to know each other?
I started getting the grounds around his house ready for spring. I told him I was on parole. He asked what for. I told him.
For rape, correct?
Yeah, I thought for sure he'd tell my boss not to let me come back, but he seemed really interested. Kept asking me questions about it.
Did you personally see Mr. Gandapur with any of the women he is charged with killing?
Yeah, all of them.
Tell us about the first.
It was the night we just had one girl at the house.
That was Angelica Moore, correct?
Yeah, she changed her mind, wanted to leave. Mr. Gandapur held her down while I raped her. When I was done, well...
Keep quiet!
Last chance, Mr. Gandapur. Remain silent or I'll have you removed.
Gandapur goes, "We better make sure she doesn't say anything to anybody."
What did he mean?
I go back to jail, so he killed her.
Why not go to the police after the first murder? Why not testify against Mr. Gandapur?
I'm a convicted rapist out on parole. He's a millionaire. Whose story the police gonna buy?
Did you ever bring prostitutes to Mr. Gandapur's home at his request?
Yeah, a lot of them.
That is a lie!
Mr. Gandapur, sit down.
Go on, Mr. Jackson.
First, he had me bring back hookers to the house 2 at a time. We'd party together, do some ice, that's crystal meth. At least I would, and the girls would.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness's story is complete fabrication.
Overruled. You'll have your chance to cross, Mr. Gandapur.
What happened with Wendy Crane?
I get her into the van, give her a little meth. She said she was up for whatever, so I pulled out my knife to tie her up. She starts freaking out. She's hitting me.
Then what?
She jumps out of the van, screaming her head off. I just kind of put my hands around her throat, just to shut her up, you know? But before I knew, she ain't screaming anymore.
What became your pattern?
I'd go and find girls, bring them back. I took them to the garden shed, we'd party. Then Mr. Gandapur would kill them, strangle them.
How many did he kill, Patty?
I don't know. 6, 7? That's what the newspaper said. I tried to forget him. I want the jury to know I'm really sorry about how this all happened. I never would have done this if it wasn't for him.
I object to this character assassination.
Mr. Cutter, please instruct your witness to limit testimony to the question asked.
No more questions, Your Honor.
I demand a mistrial.
Motion denied. You asked for this circus, Mr. Gandapur. I'm going to see it through to the end. We'll let a higher court decide if justice was served.
Very well. I can prove this man acted alone. The evidence is at his apartment. I demand we send detectives to search it again.
Objection, Your Honor. The defense is stalling for time. Patty Jackson's apartment has already been thoroughly searched by investigators who found nothing.
Thoroughly, huh? Have you checked in the walls, in the crawl space, under his bed?
Court is recessed for the day. Counselors, I want to see you in my chambers.
Cannot believe the judge approved Gondapur's request.
Nothing surprises me with this trial. Any clue from Jackson on what this evidence could be?
None. He won't talk.
I don't like it.
Gandapur knows that any evidence we find has to be turned over to him. It's what he's counting on. But why?
Whatever it is must implicate Jackson as being the real ringleader.
Wait a minute! The police never found the souvenirs taken from the victims, the locks of hair that were missing.
That was Jackson's MO when he committed those rapes in Washington Heights. If the search reveals trophies like that in his apartment, it would go a long way to convince a jury that Jackson was responsible for the murders, not Gondapur.
Get this. When detectives searched Jackson's van, they found a small jewelry box with a false bottom. Patty was a carpenter. He used the jewelry box to hide the crystal meth he used to disorient his victims. I'm willing to bet that's what Gandapur wants us to find in Jackson's apartment.
He knows it's there, but he wants us to find it. That gives him total deniability while nailing Jackson to the wall.
Call Logan. He might be able to help us thread a pretty small loophole here. I'm going to take a walk. From this point on, keep me out of the loop.
Hey, Abby. It's Mike Logan. I found something.
Don't tell me what it is.
Don't worry, I know the rules. I'll file my report after you guys conduct your own search. Just, tell the uniforms not to shake the present too hard. Might break what's inside.
Thanks, Mike. You're a lifesaver.
Why don't you thank me with dinner?
Remember, this isn't gonna work unless he gets good and angry.
Don't worry. I have a special talent when it comes to infuriating people. Mr. Gondapur, you stated at the close of trial yesterday that investigators were to search Mr. Jackson's apartment again for evidence pertaining to this case.
Indeed.
They didn't find anything.
I am well aware.
What was it about Angelica Moore, Mr. Gondapur? Why is it you were so fixated on her that months after you were arrested picking her up, you sent Mr. Jackson here to kidnap her for you?
She was a woman in need who I tried to help and who took advantage. That is all. The arrest was a misunderstanding and the charges were dropped.
Misunderstanding? Are you sure? Because I have an affidavit by one Donald Deshawn, aka Bankroll, an associate of Angelica Moore's who swears under oath that Angelica changed her testimony after he received a bribe on her behalf of $1,000.
That is ridiculous. He must have me confused with someone else.
Oh yeah, another person of Arab descent in Harlem who was arrested for assaulting Angelica Moore shortly before her death.
Are you trying to get a rise out of me, Mr. Cutter?
It doesn't seem to take much, Mr. Gondapur. What did you want us to find in Patty Jackson's apartment, Mr. Gondapur?
What makes you think I expected you to find anything?
Under his bed. Yet detectives did a full sweep of the apartment and found nothing.
A chest! A small wooden chest! How could they miss it?
Yes, one wooden chest. Exhibit C, let's call it.
There! That's it! That will prove my innocence!
Mr. Gondapur, could you explain to the court how an empty wooden chest will prove you innocent?
Are you an imbecile? Give it to me! There! There, you see? He took a lock of their hair. I saw him do it to each girl. You didn't think I knew, did you? Nothing gets past me, you mongoloid. No. No, wait. I didn't mean that I'd...
No further questions, Your Honor.
No. I demand a mistrial. No, no!
The prosecution rests, Your Honor.
Mr. Gondapur?
The defense rests, Your Honor.
The jury is to retire for deliberations. I'll send along jury instructions shortly. Court adjourned. Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
Please read the verdict as it stands recorded.
In regards to Mr. Gandapur, as to counts 1 through 8, homicide in the first degree, guilty.
By this time tomorrow, I'll have the best law firm in Manhattan working overtime on my appeal.
I might do some comparison shopping if I were you. Your board of directors voted to have you removed.
So Patty Jackson goes back to jail and Gandapur gets multiple life sentences without parole. Well done.
Nice to see that the super rich are still held to the same standards of justice as the rest of us, once in a while.
At least until his appeal.
To the rest of us.
Is that what I think it is?
Briscoe's Little Black Book of Unsolved Cases.
How did you...
Uh-uh-uh.
Right. I don't want to know. Hold on. Frank Vincenzo Jr. I recognize that one.
Do tell.
He was a tenant in the apartment building where that Glock 17 was found.
Got a forwarding?
According to this, he's still a tenant.
Thank God for rent control.